Hi Tyler, hope you're having fun on the road out there, and sorry about hearing about your guitar issues. Yeah, $500, I wouldn't rent a guitar for $500 for what I'm assuming is probably a week. I would probably buy one by that point. If you want, we can talk about trying to find like a traveler guitar for you, when that folds up is collapsible, or maybe some like really small kind of fractional guitar, just so that way you'd have something out there where you didn't have that issue all the time. Anyway, so we can talk about it more later on if you next lesson. So a couple things I want to talk about today. I'll go down the list, and if you have questions at the end, feel free to shoot them over to me. You're not bothering me by sending over videos or asking me questions. It doesn't bother me at all. So I'm glad you're having more fun with the cage boxes. Yeah, it's just experiment with them. So what we do is we give ourselves a set of guidelines to follow in like the creative process. Remember, the first step is that acquisition stage, like where do I even put my fingers, right? And after you know where to put your fingers, then you can spend the time to actually hear. Step number 2 is hearing what you're playing, right? Then you can focus on, oh, what does it sound like when I bring out those when I bring out those like little half steps in the major scale. Because you can't do that if you're always constantly wondering, where am I putting my fingers, right? Or if you don't have the pattern stone cold. Then you can start really hearing it and then go, okay, now that I spent time hearing what this thing even sounds like, now I can be creative with it. And so in keeping with, now I'm assuming that the scales that you're going through, you've already mastered like level 1, and then you're working on hearing it. The talking more about writing is that there are 2 types of melodic motion. One being by step and another being skip. So an example of stepwise motion in the scale, I'm going to do box 1, C master scale, or C major, A minor. They're the same ingredients. We just treat them differently in both of those situations. So if I run the scale this way, it's going up, or if I come back down, that is stepwise motion. I'm not skipping over any notes. On every note, I'm going to the adjacent note. Either way, either I'm going up or I'm going down. I'm never ever jumping over anything, right? And this idea is called an interval. So an interval is a musical distance between 2 notes. So the interval here that we're talking about in stepwise motion is called a second, right? So if you look on here, C to D is the interval of a second. D to E is the interval of a second. E to F is the interval of a second, and so on and so forth. And it goes in either direction. So D to C would be a second. E to D would be a second. So it goes either way. Right? And so the interval of a second produces stepwise motion in a scale. Right? So when you're playing this right here, you can tell all your buddies, oh, I'm going to play in stepwise motion in intervals of a second, because they're C to D, D to E, or sorry, B to C, C to D, D to E, E to F. Those are all seconds when you play that way. When you're playing a 3-note sequence, you're still playing intervals of a second. You're just kind of constantly shifting which direction you're going in. So if I'm playing here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? I am still moving in stepwise motion the interval of a second, because their intervals are a musical distance between 2 pitches. Now, playing in stepwise motion all the time becomes boring and monotonous because it's predictable, right? And what we want to do is we introduce a little like chaos into the situation, a little bit of melodic interest. And what we can do is something called a skip, right? A wider interval than a second. And the place for us to start with that is a third. We're going to go through each one of them. So we're going to do seconds, thirds, there are fourths, there are fifths, there are sixths, there are sevenths, there are eighths, there are ninths, there are tenths, 11ths, and 13ths. And if you're familiar with those terms, those go into the chords. We jumping that intervallic distance. It takes a long time to get fluent in all of them, and to be honest with you, I don't use all of them myself. I find ones that I like. I really enjoy fourths. Right, I like that sound, so I incorporate a lot in my writing where I'm improvising. I don't use fifths a lot because this just doesn't speak to me. So not all of them are for everybody, but we got to go through each one to make sure that to find out what you like and the ones that you gravitate towards the most. So the interval of a third, what we're doing is we're skipping over every other note in the master scale. So if you look right here, we said before that C to D is the interval of a second. If we go C to E, right? That is the interval of a third, right? Because I jumped over that middle note right there. So 1, 2, 3, interval of a third. 1, 2, 3, interval of a third. So E to G is a third, G to B is a third. So I'm going to jump over that middle guy right there. So G, A, B in the musical alphabet is the distance of a third. And if you looked what I did right here, what I did is I stacked the master scale in thirds right here. So underneath here, we did a few weeks ago, is I wrote another one here starting on E. That's because that's the interval of a third. This is a C chord right here. It's how you spell it, right? And if you stack these notes in thirds, you end up with like how to spell triads. These are how you spell triadic harmony or triadic chords. And then that way you'll know what you're targeting when we end up going soloing. We try to target thirds and fifths. You'll know what that means. Right? So a chord is simply just a root note and 2/3 intervals of a third. So C to E is a third, E to G is a third, the same way that the C to E is a third, E, G. Those are the notes of a C major chord. And digress a little bit from my notes, that's when you're playing, I asked you to do like, say, oops. Right, that stuff right there. You're outlining all the chord tones in the C chord, and you're building the chords in thirds right there. So what does this mean for our playing? What we should do with the boxes is that now that you've been running it in stepwise motion, it is time for us to learn how to do it in wider intervallic jumps in this third right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a box, right? I'm going to start here with box 1 because that's just where I'm going to start. And I'm going to jump over your other note. And don't worry, I'm going to tap this out for you and send it to you so that way you have it to look at. I find some people who are visual learners, they just need to see it on paper, not just watch me do it or hear it. So what I'll do is I'll play that same. And I'm going to jump over every other note, right? Because I'm playing in the interval of a third. And it sounds like this. Back down. There you go. All right. Time to good practice. You land on that C right there because playing, I want to land on that C with my thirds of interval. So what I want you to do is I want you to practice that and get that under your fingers because like I said, we can't create with it unless that is fluent. So practice going up and down, just one box for right now. And eventually what will happen is you kind of like, you'll hear that. You'll hear what that next note's supposed to be. I always hum along when I do these. That way I kind of really get that sound of a third in my ear, the sound of the interval in my ear. That way, if you're listening to a solo, I heard it in a solo the other day, I think it was actually an Animals as Leaders tune. There was a solo section in one of the songs, and then I heard him do something. I heard that right there. I'm like, oh, intervals of a third. And if you hear that, you go, oh, and now if I want to play like that guy or that girl in that band, I can hear what intervals they like in their solos. I can copy them or recreate them. So what I want you to do is practice that for me. And then once you get comfortable with that, the assignment is, okay, so here's the assignment is to do box one major shape in intervals of a third. And once that pattern is under your fingers, combine it with a stepwise pattern to break up the monotony of said stepwise pattern. So what you'll do is you get that box 1, right? And you might start here in the middle of the scale or something. So I might start here. And then all I'll do is this. So I start doing intervals of a third, kind of in the middle of the scale. And then switch to like a 3-note sequence, for example. And then an interval of a third at the very end to create interest. right? So be able to do that for me for next time, and then we'll start working more. We'll do a practice melodic line in the studio next time. And then the next thing is I saw that your friend's tune is a finger picking tune. So if you want, we can pivot over to doing more finger style stuff again in combination with this the electric guitar solo stuff. Send me over a video of you playing through the CSN tune. I'd like to see how your finger style is coming along with that and what your right hand is looking like, if there's anything slowing you down or any habits that we have to kind of like check out and smooth out a little bit. And that way I can give you another appropriate tune, finger style tune to work on, whether it be a challenge tune or one that doesn't take very long to get in your fingers. Send me over your friend's tune, because what I'm thinking would be a really cool project would be to come up with a layering on top of his fingerstyle pattern. So like I said, I don't know what his tune sounds like or what key it's in or anything like that, but say if I just did this, for example, say if I had like that landslide kind of feel. If I throw that in the looper, let's see here. Clear it out if I want to do. There's any number of things we can do over that to layer it to make it more interesting, right? We, for example, could go and do like, or right, we could take our cage chords and practice fragmenting the cage chords. That way you get more familiar with these smaller shapes, these chord shapes on the neck. Now that you understand like where triads are coming from. So I did. There we go. Stuff like that. We can maybe create a second guitar part to go over top of your friend's part, and that way you can use a bit of a challenge with what to play over top. So a couple things we could do: we either do a lead line with this stuff here with the electric guitar, or we can do a finger style layer on top of that, or maybe even both. Maybe there's a solo guitar section in there, electric guitar solo, and then you play a finger style pattern where you're kind of moving around the neck to add more embellishments into maybe wherever your friend's playing. So cool, send it over to me so I can see where we're sitting at with your technique and where that song is. Send me over your friend's tune so we can kind of get a feel for what we could probably do over top of it, and then work on your intervals of a third. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me back a message. I'll be more than happy to answer. Take care, man. Bye.